Peace, family, and welcome to this edition of the Reading and Writing in the Dark podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, your host, and we are here to talk about reading and writing from a Black perspective, in particular a pro-Black perspective, but if you're Black, this is for you. This is about works that are written by Black people and interesting books to read. We'll talk about fiction and nonfiction, and we'll also talk about writing as a Black author, and there'll be interviews with Black authors and just a whole lot of good information, I hope, just about taking control of our own narrative. That's a very important thing to me. That's a very important point to me, and I just think that it's a fantastic thing when we control our own narrative, because when we don't, then others control it for us and they do not present us in a good light whatsoever. And I think we all know that. We've seen the results of it. We see it all around us when people control our perceptions of ourselves, because we're just inundated with a whole bunch of whatever. So anyway, whether it has to do with movies, whether it has to do with media or anything. In this podcast, we of course deal with the written word. So just a little bit of housekeeping. You may hear cars going by or trucks or whatever, and I apologize for that. I'm not in a soundproof room. This is pretty much my window, and so the sound just comes from every place. And it's soundproofed in here, as I just said. So there may be music, or you may hear people talking in the background or whatever. But I think that you should be able to make out what I'm saying clearly. So all of that said, I'm definitely going to talk about my new book, MELANIN, that is available for pre-sale on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can go to my website, www.ayapoyapa.com. If you can't remember or don't know how to spell Ayapo Yapa because it's an odd name, just think, if you aren't pissed off, you aren't paying attention. Ayapo Yapa is an acronym of that. If you aren't pissed off, you aren't paying attention. I do want to give a shout out to Q Butter and his staff. They had a ceremony today at his school, and it was just one of the most fantastic things that I ever saw. It was very inspirational, very powerful, and I count that also as taking control of our own narrative. It's taking control of what we learn, how we perceive ourselves, by teaching young people who they are in the context of our people, who they are in the context of this world. It was wonderful. I watched the whole thing and it was beautiful. I also want to shout out Information Man. He constantly is speaking with writers. He speaks with filmmakers. He speaks with musicians and content creators, people in various professional fields who are Black and are Black loving and are about Black us. And yeah, he definitely works for us to get control of our narrative. And also one more shout out, or else I'll be shouting people out all night. There's Ajali Shabazz, and she wrote This Black and Furnace of Affliction, and she's just now finishing up the sequel to This Black that is untitled as of yet, but I'm very much looking forward to it. TJ Riley, The Path to Brightness. I said I'm going to keep shouting a whole bunch of people out. But TJ Riley, The Path to Brightness, that is available on Amazon. Ajali Shabazz's books are also available on Amazon, and her book Furnace of Affliction can also be found at her King's website, which is 25,000yearcycle.net, not .com, .net. And it's available there for $15 less than on Amazon. And you can also get it autographed there. So you'll probably want to consider getting it there before going to Amazon to get it. Okay, now, MELANIN. MELANIN is my first completed novel. before I said that I had written it, started writing it around November of last year, which was 2021. And I did. I started writing it in earnest in 2021, November of 2021. But I had, in fact, started it 3 or 4 years earlier and only got like 2 chapters in before I stopped writing it. And then I decided to pick it back up and was determined to complete it. And so I ended up completing it. I'm trying to remember when, February. It was either January or February of this year. And it's over 500 pages. This is a substantial book, but a lot happens in the book. And it's a story that took a lot to tell. The synopsis of it is that there is a man-made radiological catastrophe, and it causes people to become susceptible to a very virulent form. I don't know if you need a modifier with that, but a virulent form of melanoma. And it only affects the Caucasian population, the white population. And this scientist comes up with a way to save them. The only way is for the white population to become black, phenotypically, genetically black, not tanned white, as I'm always saying. And if you hear me interviewed, I'll say it over and over again because that's just how it is. Not tanned white people. They become, in fact, black people, specifically East African black, which has a certain look phenotypically, very dark. After getting the procedures that make them black, that starts changing the texture of their hair, their skeletal form starts to change, and they become black. And the only choices open to them are to either get that procedure or take the chance on getting the melanoma. And the chances of getting the melanoma, if you're white, is something like 98%. So it's almost certain death if you don't do it. So that isn't even a spoiler, because that's pretty much just the premise upon which the story is built. There's a lot that happens in the story, and I did my best to address social issues, not the least of which is something like what would happen if you're naturally black and you're in a society where you're forced to have to be 2 and 3 times better than a white person just to get half as far as they got. What happens when now that white person is black and you're black, and they have been able to rest their mediocrity upon the fact that they were white, and they could beat you out just because they're white, but now they're black and you're 3 times better than them because they forced you to be 2 and 3 times better than them. That's not the whole story. That's just the type of little things that I address in the story, in addition to little things that I drop that only our people would understand or get. I only write to black audiences. When I'm writing, I only write with a black audience in mind. So when you're reading the story, it's unapologetic. It is very on the nose at some points. But I love the book. I guess I should. I wrote it. There's a lot that goes on in the story, and there are genuinely high stakes in the story. That's Melanin. Like I said, it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble for pre-order. The book actually comes out on August 31st. After August 31st, right now, you can get it for an introductory price of $3.99, which is super cheap. Everybody I talked to said you should be selling it way higher than that. I'm like, well, that's just an introductory price for people who pre-order. And so it's $3.99, both on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can also see the book on Goodreads, but all it's going to do is lead you back to Barnes & Noble. But Goodreads is a good platform if you are interested in reading, or if you're a writer and you're interested in getting your getting your work out there, and also getting feedback and giving feedback to different authors. After August 31st, the price of the book goes to $9.99 for the Kindle version and $19.99 so far, as my wife and I have discussed it, $19.99 for a physical copy. And we're looking into right now how much it would be for a hard copy, because the physical copy will be only be paperback for right now. So that's the story of Melanin. I have several other books that are complete, but they're in the editorial processes. So, I mean, it's kind of semantics as to whether they're finished or not. But I consider them finished because I'm finished writing on them. And then once they come back, then I will do edits. But as of right now, they're complete books. One is Paradigm Void, which is a series of my short stories. There's The Redemption of Maxine Allison. And I think that book's going to cause a lot of controversy among... I don't want to give away any spoilers. I will say this about The Redemption of Maxine Allison, though. After I wrote it, I became convinced that I could probably write a good mystery, too, because though it's not a mystery book, it is an intricate book that has it has, like Melanin has a lot of twists and turns, but it's not what I would necessarily call intricate. It fits together, has a lot of twists and turns. The Redemption of Maxine Allison, when I call that book intricate, is because, yes, it has some twists and turns, but it's more about the moving pieces and how they fit together. I'm really proud of the work. It started out as a short story in the book Paradigm Void, but it was so long that I said this could actually be its own book as a standalone, a novella. And, novellas have a certain word count. Novels have a certain word count. So do short stories and so on. I don't really adhere totally to it. But in this case, I did, and I said, yeah, this is a novella. But it is a good story, and like I said, I keep saying it'll be controversial. I think it will, just because of the subject matter and the way it plays out. So that's The Redemption of Maxine Allison, and it's a quick read. That's the beautiful thing about it. I was about to say the beauty part. My wife hates for me to say that. So that's the beautiful part about it, is that it really is a quick read. It's not like Melanin, where it's 400 and 500 pages and so on. This Maxine Allison, I think, is under 200 pages. And finally, And What of the Cargo, which I love that book. I love it, and I can't say a lot about it without giving it away. But I will say this: it's my first attempt at horror and suspense, and to be honest, I don't know how it would come off, because for a black person, I don't know how much the story would be horror. That's about the most I could say about it. For a white person, the whole thing is probably like the most terrifying thing that they've ever read in life, if they read it, which I don't write it for them, so that's neither here nor there. But I guess as a black person reading it, it wouldn't be horror at all, except possibly the prologue. The prologue, admittedly, it will be a difficult thing to work through, and I know that, because it's brutal. There's a lot of brutality in the prologue, and actually into the first chapter. So if you have a hard time dealing with, I don't know how to put it without giving anything away. But if you have a hard time dealing with harsh